We're at Distributech 2023, one of the sponsors of these interviews, and these are interviews with thought leaders from around North America and the globe. Our sponsors are H2 Scan. H2 Scan is the leading sensor manufacturer for hydrogen sensing in a lot of different applications, in transformers, in battery room safety, in processes and safety, in industrial, and in the future hydrogen economy. So I want to thank our sponsors, and I want to thank all of our guests, and I hope you enjoy this interview. My next guest is one who I've interviewed before, and it's been a delight. Javiera McGuiggan. She's with FR3. She is the global director of biodegradables for Cargill. Javi, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a delight. Okay, so there's something new on the market, actually now, and about a month ago I wanted to talk about it to somebody.
Fresh off the press.
I wasn't allowed to. He said, don't mention it. And I said, okay, when I interview Javi, I'm going to mention it. Rapeseed oil.
Breaking news. You're
what is the
exclusive
rapeseed oil thing that you're doing with FR3?
So we are this week, middle of February, launching FR3R, which is like FR3's little cousin, made out of rapeseed oil. Rapeseed is exactly the same as canola. Canadian seed is the same as rapeseed. So we're launching that middle of this month. I'm sure you want to know why.
Well, then my next question is, why have another product when we know FR3 works and it works really well?
It works fantastic. What is mostly driving this need is that, mostly I would tell you, pushed by the European market. They have this crop available, so they like the localized oil. That's one of the drivers. Other people that you can spend 10,000 hours explaining to them that we are not the cause of deforesting the Amazon, and they think soy is bad, and it's sort of already embedded in some people's head that soy could be damaging somehow the environment. We obviously don't, but we want to make it clear for people that it's not a product that is better, it's just different crop. As Cargill, and being such a big agent in agriculture, we can make it out of anything. We just know that soy is the best combination of performance and cost that was available right now. But if people really are interested in having a rapeseed version, and other starters in this market are starting with rapeseed, we don't want people to ever think, I cannot get that solution from Cargill, because now you can.
Okay, now you can. That's excellent. So I love the idea of localized crop, man, because everybody would want that. You know, hey, we don't produce
Help
soy.
your own economy,
Yeah.
Stop avoiding moving things around too much, saves in transportation and that part of the contamination of the cycles of life. So if we can do things locally, we will try to do that too. That's why we have so many plants everywhere, but this will be a new European plant.
Something I've heard recently, and we're all about decarbonization, decentralization, decarbonization, digitalization. Cargill has played a major role in decarbonization because you are using plant-based oils as opposed to using mineral oils. I heard recently an argument that, hey, refining mineral oil now is a green. Now I'm having a hard time saying.
How do you?
No. It's still mineral oil. It's a carbon-based product,
exactly.
And now it's a refined carbon-based product, but it's not a plant-based product.
It's not a plant. Exactly.
I know you can't really just jump all over that concept, but why would they try to equate mineral oil that's been repurposed, I know life cycle analysis,
to a plant?
Exactly. To a plant.
I try to tell people when this argument comes up.
You can go off, okay?
It's sustainability is a super important topic. Decarbonization there's no company that doesn't want to achieve that and contribute in some way. So I understand everyone's trying to say it, right? I always go down to the basics of, we can argue about life cycle analysis and numbers and spreadsheets, but can you find anything that would be greener or better for the world than a plant?
Right.
No. So what happens is, for an LCA analysis, life cycle analysis, where you're measuring the amount of carbon that's emitted to the world, of course mineral oil as a petroleum-based solution has a lot of contribution to CO2, which is then global warming, things we want to avoid. Not only to the level of neutral, hopefully to the level of negative. When you start from a plant, as the plants are alive, they have a biogenic property where they're absorbing CO2. So they're literally doing the opposite effect. So some LCAs take an effect the farming and the whole agriculture, and they ignore the fact that the plant was sitting there breathing and absorbing CO2. So you absolutely have to consider that in an analysis, for example. Then you consider all the normal farming processes, then the production of FR3, and you get to a number. That's much better than mineral oil, for sure, because again, it's a plant. Even negative if you add the biogenic component of the plant. Then petroleum solutions are claiming, well, they can reuse that product for something else, which, don't get me wrong, it's fantastic. It's what the world needs, that we do less waste. So reusing mineral oil, great. Can you reuse FR3 for other alternative? Also true. It doesn't take away the fact of all the carbon that was emitted at the beginning to produce mineral oil in the first place.
Right.
So just looking at plain numbers and then for some different math coming to say, oh, maybe mineral oil is better than a plant. It's like, it's just a confusion. So hopefully people understand exactly apples to apples what they're comparing, that's all. Because we're all trying to do the right thing.
There's an old game, and they have a peanut under 3 cups, and they keep moving it around, and they say, where's the peanut? And they distract you while they take the peanut out, and so you're distracted. That's a little bit of the shell game is what it's called.
I applaud the effort of anyone that makes something that contaminates the world to try to reuse it for another purpose.
That's good, yeah.
Before it's thrown away, that's great. We can also do that with FR3, and that's not the point. The point is, I don't want anyone to get confused to the level of thinking, maybe it's better than FR3 because we're comparing to a plant. So there can't be anything greener is what I always say. That's the end of the discussion.
Oh, that's really good. There can't be anything greener, and I love your green shirt. You're the global head of biodegradables, and so you see the world at a different, like I'd say 35,000 feet. The world is not the same in adopting all of these things. Who's ahead, who's behind, who is really supporting biodegradables, and who is just nascently getting into it? I mean, just starting. Talk about that.
The ones that are the most ahead are linked to the most developed economies. So for sure the United States is the largest consumer of biodegradable, bio-based products. Then there's a very, very accelerated push in Europe. I feel Europe needed a little more of the proof that it works and how it's going to affect their pockets and if they can financially establish it. But they have aging grids and a bunch of other benefits that they get from these bio-based solutions. So they're in a very much accelerated pace compared to what there have been before. And then also surprisingly to me, because we're not always the leaders in technology, because I'm from Latin America, but Latin America has been very, very much convinced of that this is the right solution. So you see countries like Brazil, almost close to 90% of their distribution grid is now all in natural esters.
Really?
So those are the 3 ones that I would say are driving the change. Next to that, there's countries that are doing really great efforts. South Africa turned all their grid into natural esters. The Philippines also established that. So slowly but surely all the rest are catching up. Asia, I would tell you, Japan, Korea, China are peeking their toes into the water, but they'll catch up pretty quickly. You know, once they get into it, they'll go super fast.
We found out that the Chinese, once they believe it, they go after it.
They start a really fast reproduction of alternatives, which
Yeah.
is happening. So I always said, if we do our job right, and people realize how good this is for them, there'll be many others that come later and want to participate in this market. And that to me is, in general, it's a good thing to have more competition because at least we're all trying to defend which is the best natural ester. I can raise my hand, I think I have the best one, for sure. But at least I'm not still trying to convince people that it works or to trust it. It's more of a wave of, we know it works, there's just more activity in the market. And I think overall for the planet, it's a good thing.
So now I know that's a good thing. We're going to move away from that because what we have found in this, I say we, the industry, I was the president of the Electric Power Reliability Alliance, and we had a lot of labs that we worked with. And so they were doing a lot of testing of FR3, annual testing of FR3. And as they began to build up the data, they began to see some benefits to FR3 that weren't there in mineral oil. Speak a little bit about those. Sell me on FR3. Okay.
If it's something related to lab analysis, one of the easiest things you could find is how FR3 just for the pure nature of the science of how vegetable oils work, how it deals with moisture and free water. So the molecules of soybean, they kind of degrade the water into two separate components, so then it's not free water that can then get attached to your solid insulation. And that's how FR3 extends the life of a transformer, for example. It's not just a tagline and an experiment, it's that actually there is a chemical reaction with water that avoids it from attaching to the solid insulation. So that's one of the things that they can find in a lab analysis is less soluble, free moisture, water present. That could be one of the things for sure. It also doesn't, I always say, it's hard to explain, but FR3 is good at aging. So it doesn't go brown, it doesn't get burned, you know? It has a good aging. You open a transformer with FR3 that's been working for 15, 20 years, and it almost looks exactly the same. I don't know if I told you the story. At a utility in California, I met an engineer and he says, I don't like your fluid. I said, why? Because if I open a mineral oil transformer, I look at the oil, I know exactly what's happened to this transformer. I know what it's been through, I know how long it's been working, I know what could be failing. I open one of yours and I can't tell anything. And I'm like, exactly. That's why you should like it. But he hated it because he would see no change in the oil. And that's another good property. It deals good with heat. It's robust, I would say.
That was one of the things I learned just recently is how FR3 can withstand overheating significantly better than mineral oil. And so when you think about where we are right now, the demand on the grid is growing. Everybody is having to produce more. You can't get more transformers. They're 3 years out in some cases. And we've had a couple of transformer manufacturers here share with us the difficulty they're trying to ramp up, right? So you've got to keep the existing infrastructure working. The best way to do that is to keep the existing infrastructure working, right? And so you're gonna overheat. You're going to overload your transformers. They're all doing it.
And not exposing yourself to risk.
Yeah.
Because you don't want the supply need to drive any other bad consequences.
Right. And so the idea that you have FR3 in it, which then brings me around to the next question. For every transformer new that somebody specs FR3, there's 1,000 of them in the market, whether it's utilities or industry. What is the value of retrofilling, the cost of that retrofilling versus the value of retrofilling with FR3? We know the safety issues, the fire retardant. We know that if you're near water, you don't want mineral oil to spill in water.
But how much value you get versus what the cost of it is a really, really, really great question, Alan, because when you think of a new transformer, the initial ratio of the price of the oil versus the total cost of a transformer is anywhere between 5 to 8% of the cost of the whole unit. So maybe initially when you're buying the whole unit and you have a fluid that's a bit more expensive than your incumbent mineral oil, you just elevate the cost of the whole unit and you think, oh, do I want to spend that money when I'm already having to buy all this number of transformers? After a while, mineral oil transformers either need a refresh or a retrofill or add a couple of additives that have maybe worn out. In the case of FR3, that won't happen, and when you just evaluate the cost of oil versus oil, it's such an insignificant cost compared to the labor of even doing this maintenance. I got this from another engineer in a utility in California that I can't name, but he said, I want to just put this oil in there because then I know I don't have to touch it again. And labor to cost a transformer could be 4 times or more, depending on the location of the transformer. So you have the crew that has to go there, the time spent on shutting it down, getting it off the grid, doing this maintenance. So at least 4 times labor versus the cost of the transformer initially is a number that he said, the more that I can leave it there and not have to touch it, the better. Then on top of that, if you already have the transformer working and you can extend the life, then again, you have a transformer that there's less frequent buying of units, which is another economic factor that people sometimes, it's not easy for them to integrate into their equations. They're just thinking about the initial cost. But it's much, much less significant as a maintenance operation to then do this retrofill compared to all the benefits that you would get out of it. because you get 90% of all the same benefits that you get from a new transformer with FR3.
Good, excellent. That's a great.
People always ask if there's a little mineral oil left in there, would it still work? And yes, it does.
Yeah, we've known that a long time now. In the old days, 10 years ago, there was fear about how could you possibly do that? There'll be residual on the paper. It actually makes everything better. So that last question, we've talked about this last time. Labor is an issue now, all right? And we've two parts of that. You are on the steering committee of Women in Power Systems. So getting more women engineering into STEM, science, technology, and you're a real champion for that. Thank you. And Cargill is a real champion of that. But now there's just a huge problem of getting any staff, male or female, right?
Because labor point.
Yeah, huge. Yeah. Are you suffering from that same thing? Is Cargill as a whole suffering from it, or how do you help industry address it?
Of well-educated engineering talent, yes.
Okay.
We even struggle with filling some positions in our team that are a great company and exciting positions, but finding the right mix of the right energy to sell something that is changing the way people used to think about something. So it's not just sales, it's telling a story. Engineers working at our plants for all the capacity increases that we need at our plants. It gets harder and harder to find people, so we're struggling too. We are thankfully good at retaining, so it's a lesson for all of us to learn that treat your employees well and retain them, because it's not as easy as it used to be to just get new talent all of a sudden.
Used to be, we did surveys as part of a group I'm part of, and the number one reason that people looked for something in their career was pay, benefits, job security. That was like the top of it. Believe it or not, now it is, I want to make a difference.
It has to be fulfillment.
Yeah, it's fulfillment. I
It's
want
a
to make a difference.
generation that wants to feel their job means something.
Yes.
And also with COVID, the freedom of that, to me, is a little scary, of people that don't even want to go to a work environment, to an office or to a plant. They just want to work from home, and I understand it, and I value the balance of maybe a hybrid situation, but I think the interaction between people, the collaboration of being in person, and especially for newer engineering graduates, they need to gain that experience from the people that have been there before. So I feel there's got to be an adjustment coming hopefully soon of people realizing, okay, a hybrid and a working from home situation are great, but we also have to embrace real life, transferring knowledge, transferring information, and just daily collaboration.
Because part of the other thing is what people want out of a career, community. They want to know they're part of something, yes, that does something for society, but they also want to know they're a part of a community. And you can't be part of a community when you're sitting
just from
at
a
home.
Video screen, and especially when people don't turn it on.
Yeah.
So many times. It's understandable, but it's sad, because then you don't get any connection if you don't even turn on your camera.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's just this dot with
We're
your
like,
picture.
I hope they're listening. I
Yeah.
hope they got the message. Sometimes it's hard because, especially for women, work-life balance. You have your kids at home or you're doing something. Women have to get all prettied up to be in camera. It's just a lot more social pressure to look okay in front of a camera, so I understand it. But when possible, at least that minimum interaction of the video being on, it's very valuable.
Yeah, that's true. It has been a delight, as always. We will do this again. If we see you at Grid Edge, dinner.
Yes.
On me.
For sure.
Javi, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
This has been an APC Technologies production, and we thank you for joining us. Our sponsors have been H2 Scan and Distributech. And of course, the communities of APC Technologies, which is Transform Technology, Power Systems Technology, Green Energy Technology, and Women in Power Systems. So thank you.